security guards tore through Evelyn Shaw's worn backpack at the Fort Carson checkpoint, their suspicion growing with each expired document and outdated identification they found. The 45-year-old woman stood silently as they questioned her right to be there. Then Colonel Mark Ramsey spotted the faded Ghost Recon patch and whispered urgently, "Stand down immediately." Fort Carson's main checkpoint buzzed with the controlled chaos of military efficiency, where armed guards processed hundreds of personnel and visitors daily through multiple security layers designed to protect one of America's most important training facilities. The Colorado morning air was crisp as soldiers, contractors, and authorized civilians moved through metal detectors and document verification stations. Advanced scanning equipment hummed quietly while guard dogs conducted random searches, their handlers maintaining the vigilant alertness that characterized post-9/11 military security. This was the first line of defense for a base that housed classified training operations and cutting-edge military technology. Evelyn Shaw approached the checkpoint with the measured pace of someone who understood military protocol, but carried herself with an unusual combination of confidence and caution. At 45, she possessed the kind of weathered competence that came from years of technical work in demanding environments. Her graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her clothes chosen for function rather than appearance. Her backpack was military surplus, worn but well maintained, containing the tools and documentation of someone who worked on the edges of official recognition. Shaw's official existence had been deliberately obscured through a combination of bureaucratic necessity and operational security that left her in a professional limbo few people could understand. Her expertise in drone technology and electronic warfare systems was world-class, developed through years of classified work with special operations units. But her current status was complicated by events that had forced her into the shadows of the defense contracting world. The irony of her situation was that her most important contributions to national security often came through unofficial channels, solving problems that others couldn't identify or address. Her presence at Fort Carson represented another such opportunity, though the guards processing her entry had no way of understanding the significance of the unassuming woman whose credentials didn't match her capabilities. The central challenge Shaw faced was operating effectively within military systems that no longer officially recognized her existence. Despite her possession of expertise that was crucial to ongoing operations, her attempts to contribute to national security were constantly hampered by bureaucratic obstacles, expired clearances, and the institutional memory loss that occurred when classified programs were disbanded or reorganized. The checkpoint search represented a microcosm of this larger problem. Her value to military operations was invisible to those tasked with security, creating barriers that prevented her from contributing solutions to problems she was uniquely qualified to solve. The opportunity that had brought Shaw to Fort Carson was a call for help from a former colleague who was struggling with unexplained drone system failures during critical training exercises. The problems were sophisticated and persistent, suggesting either equipment defects or deliberate interference that standard troubleshooting couldn't identify or resolve. The financial and operational costs were mounting, with expensive drones crashing during routine missions and training schedules being disrupted by unreliable technology. Shaw's decision to respond to the request was complicated by her unofficial status and the challenges of gaining access to military facilities without current clearances or recognized credentials. Her expertise was desperately needed, but the bureaucratic obstacles to providing assistance seemed insurmountable through normal channels. The choice to attempt entry through visitor protocols represented a calculated risk that could either provide her with the access needed to solve critical problems or result in embarrassing confrontation with security personnel who had no context for understanding her background. The decision reflected her commitment to national security that transcended personal convenience or official recognition. Shaw understood that her unique knowledge of drone systems and electronic warfare could prevent equipment losses and potential casualties, making the risk of bureaucratic complications acceptable compared to the cost of inaction. Shaw's plan for gaining access to Fort Carson was necessarily improvised, based on her understanding of military security procedures and her hope that former colleagues would recognize her value despite her unofficial status. Her approach involved using an expired visitor pass and relying on personal relationships to provide the authorization and access needed to address the drone system problems. Her strategy required careful presentation of her credentials and background in ways that would establish her legitimacy without revealing classified information that could compromise ongoing operations or personnel. The plan involved demonstrating her expertise through specific knowledge of systems and problems that only someone with her background could possess, using technical competence to overcome bureaucratic obstacles. The approach was risky because it depended on encountering personnel who would recognize her significance and be willing to bypass normal procedures to utilize her expertise. Shaw understood that failure could result in her being barred from the facility permanently, eliminating her ability to contribute to solving problems that were affecting military readiness and costing taxpayers significant resources. Her preparation included gathering intelligence about the specific nature of the drone problems and developing preliminary solutions that could be implemented quickly once she gained access to the relevant systems and personnel. Shaw's first challenge came at the checkpoint when her expired visitor pass and outdated identification immediately flagged her for additional screening by security personnel who were trained to be suspicious of any irregularities in documentation or credentials. The guards' professional skepticism was appropriate given their responsibilities, but it created immediate obstacles to her mission of providing technical assistance. Her response to the initial questioning was measured and respectful, acknowledging the guards' concerns while attempting to provide enough information to establish her legitimacy without compromising operational security. "I'm here to consult on technical issues with drone systems," she explained. "My clearances may be expired, but my expertise is still current and needed for ongoing operations." The explanation was technically accurate, but insufficient to satisfy security protocols that required current documentation and proper authorization for access to sensitive facilities. Shaw's unofficial status created a bureaucratic catch-22, where the very secrecy that had protected her previous operations now prevented her from contributing to current needs. The guard's decision to conduct a thorough search of her belongings was standard procedure, but it would reveal items and documentation that could either establish her credibility or raise additional questions about her background and intentions. The systematic search of Shaw's backpack revealed a collection of items that painted a picture of someone whose background didn't match typical civilian or contractor profiles. Her toolkit contained specialized electronic equipment for diagnosing and repairing advanced drone systems, including components that weren't available through normal commercial channels. Technical manuals bore classification markings that suggested access to information beyond what her expired credentials should have provided. The guards' growing confusion was evident as they encountered documentation that referenced programs and operations they weren't cleared to understand. Shaw's military identification cards showed service dates and unit assignments that didn't appear in standard databases, while her technical certifications covered systems that were officially classified. The complexity of her background created more questions than answers for security personnel who were trained to handle straightforward cases rather than the bureaucratic anomalies that characterized former Special Operations personnel. Shaw remained calm during the search, understanding that her unusual documentation would create confusion, but hoping that someone with appropriate clearances would be called to resolve the situation. Her patience was based on experience with similar bureaucratic challenges and confidence that her expertise would eventually be recognized and valued despite the administrative complications. The search was attracting attention from other personnel at the checkpoint, including officers whose curiosity was aroused by the unusual nature of the situation and the obvious competence of the woman being detained. The unusual checkpoint situation began attracting attention from base personnel who recognized that something beyond routine security screening was occurring. The presence of specialized technical equipment and classified documentation suggested that Shaw was more than a typical visitor. Though her expired credentials created obvious complications for standard processing procedures, Colonel Mark Ramsey, who had been observing the checkpoint operations as part of his routine security oversight, became interested in the developing situation when he noticed the sophisticated nature of Shaw's equipment and the guards' obvious confusion about how to handle her case. His experience with special operations personnel made him sensitive to situations where bureaucratic procedures might conflict with operational necessities. Other officers and senior NCOs began to gather as word spread about the unusual search and the technical equipment that had been discovered. The growing attention created additional pressure to resolve the situation quickly, while ensuring that security protocols were maintained and any potential threats were properly assessed. The involvement of senior personnel suggested that Shaw's case would receive more thorough evaluation than typical checkpoint issues, potentially providing her with the opportunity to explain her background and mission to people with the clearances and authority needed to make appropriate decisions about her access to the facility. The breakthrough moment came when Colonel Ramsey spotted the faded Ghost Recon patch among Shaw's belongings. Immediately recognizing its significance and the implications for her background and current situation, the patch represented membership in one of the military's most classified special operations units, whose personnel were often officially listed as killed in action to protect their identities and ongoing operations. Ramsey's recognition of the patch triggered immediate changes in how the situation was handled, as he understood that Shaw's presence at Fort Carson was likely related to operational necessities rather than routine business or potential security threats. His command to stand down reflected his awareness that former Ghost Recon personnel often operated in gray areas where normal bureaucratic procedures didn't apply. The colonel's intervention transformed Shaw from a potential security concern into a valuable resource whose expertise might be crucial to addressing ongoing operational problems. His decision to personally handle her case ensured that she would receive appropriate evaluation by personnel with the clearances and background needed to understand her significance. The moment represented a shift from bureaucratic obstacle to operational opportunity, as Shaw's unique background and expertise were finally recognized by someone with the authority to utilize her capabilities effectively. As Colonel Ramsey took personal charge of Shaw's case, the preparation for addressing the drone system problems that had brought her to Fort Carson began in earnest. The colonel's recognition of her Ghost Recon background provided the context needed to understand both her capabilities and the unconventional nature of her current status. Shaw's briefing to Ramsey revealed the extent of the drone system vulnerabilities and her unique qualifications for addressing them. Her explanation of the technical problems demonstrated knowledge that could only come from intimate familiarity with the system's original design and implementation, suggesting that her involvement in their development had been more significant than anyone had realized. The preparation also involved establishing temporary clearances and access authorizations that would allow Shaw to work on classified systems while maintaining operational security. Ramsey's authority and understanding of special operations procedures enabled him to navigate the bureaucratic obstacles that had prevented Shaw from contributing through normal channels. The situation required careful balance between utilizing Shaw's expertise and maintaining the security protocols that protected sensitive military operations. The solution involved creating a controlled environment where her contributions could be maximized while minimizing potential risks to ongoing operations or classified information. The crisis that had brought Shaw to Fort Carson became fully apparent when Colonel Ramsey briefed her on the scope and severity of the drone system failures that were affecting critical training operations. The problems weren't random equipment malfunctions, but appeared to be systematic vulnerabilities that were being exploited by unknown actors to disrupt military exercises and potentially gather intelligence on American drone capabilities. The financial costs were staggering. 3 drones worth over $15 million each had crashed during routine training missions, while additional aircraft had experienced near-miss incidents that suggested deliberate interference rather than equipment failure. The operational impact was equally serious, as training schedules were being disrupted and pilot confidence in the drone systems was declining rapidly. Most concerning was the possibility that the vulnerabilities were being exploited by foreign intelligence services to gather information about American drone operations and capabilities. The sophisticated nature of the interference suggested access to classified technical specifications and operational procedures that should have been protected by multiple layers of security. Shaw's initial assessment of the problem revealed that the vulnerabilities were embedded in the fundamental architecture of the drone systems, making them difficult to detect and even more challenging to address without comprehensive understanding of the original design specifications. The complexity of the required solutions exceeded the capabilities of standard technical support personnel, explaining why previous attempts to resolve the problems had been unsuccessful. The pivotal moment came when Shaw revealed that she had been the primary architect of the drone system's original design during her time with Ghost Recon, making her uniquely qualified to understand and address the vulnerabilities that were being exploited. Her explanation of the technical specifications and security protocols demonstrated intimate knowledge that could only come from direct involvement in the system's development. "I designed these systems," Shaw told Colonel Ramsey during their classified briefing. "The vulnerabilities you're experiencing aren't accidents. They're deliberate backdoors that I built into the original architecture for special operations use. Someone has discovered them and is using them against you." The revelation transformed the situation from a technical problem to a security crisis, with implications for national defense. Shaw's disclosure explained both the sophistication of the attacks and the failure of conventional troubleshooting efforts to identify or resolve the problems. The backdoors had been designed to be invisible to standard diagnostic procedures while providing special operations personnel with the ability to override normal safety protocols when necessary for mission success. The knowledge that the vulnerabilities were being exploited by unauthorized parties raised serious questions about how classified technical specifications had been compromised and whether other military systems might be similarly vulnerable. Shaw's expertise was not just valuable for solving the immediate problem, but crucial for understanding the broader implications of the security breach. Her unique position as both the creator of the vulnerabilities and the person most qualified to address them made her indispensable to resolving the crisis while maintaining the operational capabilities that special operations units required. The turning point came when Shaw proposed a comprehensive solution that would eliminate the exploited vulnerabilities while preserving the special operations capabilities that had made the backdoors necessary in the first place. Her approach involved implementing new security protocols that would maintain authorized access while preventing unauthorized exploitation of the systems. The solution required Shaw to work directly with the drone system's software and hardware, making modifications that drew on her intimate knowledge of the original design specifications and the operational requirements that had shaped their development. Her work would need to be completed quickly to prevent additional equipment losses and restore confidence in the drone system's reliability. Colonel Ramsey's decision to authorize Shaw's direct involvement in the systems represented a significant risk, as her unofficial status and the classified nature of her background created potential complications if her activities were discovered by personnel without appropriate clearances. However, the severity of the crisis and the unique nature of her qualifications made the risk acceptable compared to the costs of continued system failures. The solution would test both Shaw's technical expertise and her ability to work within military systems that no longer officially recognized her existence, requiring her to navigate bureaucratic obstacles while implementing complex technical modifications under significant time pressure. The final preparation for Shaw's intervention in the drone system crisis required establishing a secure working environment where she could access classified systems while maintaining operational security and minimizing the risk of additional security breaches. Colonel Ramsey arranged for a dedicated facility with appropriate technical equipment and communication capabilities, staffed by personnel with the clearances necessary to support Shaw's work. The preparation also involved briefing Shaw on current operational procedures and security protocols that had evolved since her official departure from military service. While her technical expertise remained current, the administrative and procedural context had changed significantly, requiring her to adapt her approach to contemporary requirements and constraints. Shaw's work plan involved systematic analysis of the drone system's current configuration, identification of all exploited vulnerabilities, and implementation of security patches that would eliminate unauthorized access while preserving legitimate operational capabilities. The complexity of the task required not just technical expertise, but also deep understanding of special operations requirements and the operational contexts in which the systems would be used. The timeline was aggressive, driven by the need to prevent additional equipment losses and restore operational confidence before upcoming training exercises that were critical to military readiness and personnel safety. Despite her confidence in her technical abilities and understanding of the drone systems, Shaw experienced moments of doubt about her ability to resolve the crisis while working within the constraints of her unofficial status and the security protocols that limited her access to current operational information. The years since her official departure from military service had created gaps in her knowledge of current procedures and personnel that could complicate her efforts to implement effective solutions. Her concerns were both technical and operational technical, because the systems had evolved since her original design work, and operational, because her unofficial status created challenges for coordinating with current personnel and accessing the resources needed for comprehensive solutions. The possibility of failure carried significant consequences, including additional equipment losses and potential casualties if the drone system problems weren't resolved. But Shaw's commitment to national security and her unique qualifications for addressing the crisis ultimately overcame her doubts, leading her to accept the challenges and risks involved in providing the expertise needed to protect military operations and personnel. Shaw's work on the drone systems began under intense pressure, as additional system failures during her first day on the project demonstrated that the vulnerabilities were being actively exploited and that time was running out to prevent catastrophic equipment losses. The sophisticated nature of the attacks suggested that hostile actors had detailed knowledge of the system's weaknesses and were systematically testing their ability to disrupt American military operations. The pressure was compounded by the knowledge that her work was being closely monitored by senior military officials who were evaluating both her technical contributions and the security implications of involving someone with her unusual background in classified operations. Success would validate the decision to utilize her expertise, while failure could have serious consequences for both her future involvement and the officials who had authorized her participation. The stakes were measured not just in financial terms, but in operational readiness and personnel safety, as drone system failures during training exercises could result in injuries or fatalities that would have lasting impact on military morale and effectiveness. The initial phase of Shaw's work revealed the full extent of the challenges she faced in addressing the drone system vulnerabilities. The exploited backdoors were embedded throughout the system's architecture, requiring comprehensive analysis and modification of both software and hardware components. The complexity of the required changes exceeded what could be accomplished through simple patches or updates, demanding fundamental restructuring of security protocols and access controls. Additional complications arose from the need to maintain operational capabilities while implementing security improvements. As the systems needed to remain functional for ongoing training exercises and potential operational deployments, Shaw's modifications had to be precise and comprehensive, eliminating vulnerabilities without compromising the performance characteristics that made the drones valuable for military operations. The work also required coordination with current technical personnel who were unfamiliar with Shaw's background and skeptical of her unofficial status, creating interpersonal challenges that complicated the technical aspects of the project. The critical breakthrough came when Shaw successfully identified the specific methods being used to exploit the drone system's vulnerabilities, revealing a sophisticated attack pattern that combined technical expertise with detailed knowledge of operational procedures. The discovery enabled her to develop targeted countermeasures that would eliminate the security weaknesses while preserving the special operations capabilities that had made the backdoors necessary. Her analysis revealed that the attacks were being conducted by actors with access to classified technical documentation, suggesting either a security breach within military systems or the involvement of personnel with legitimate access to sensitive information. The implications extended beyond the immediate drone system problems to include broader questions about the security of classified military technology and procedures. Shaw's proposed solutions involved implementing new encryption protocols and access controls that would make unauthorized exploitation of the systems virtually impossible while maintaining the flexibility needed for special operations use. The approach required significant modifications to both software and hardware components, but offered the comprehensive security improvements needed to prevent future attacks. The breakthrough provided a clear path forward for resolving the crisis while establishing new security standards that could be applied to other military systems facing similar vulnerabilities. The moment of victory came when Shaw's security modifications successfully prevented a coordinated attack on 3 drones during a critical training exercise, demonstrating that her solutions were effective against the sophisticated threats that had been plaguing the systems. The successful defense of the aircraft represented not just technical achievement, but validation of the decision to utilize her expertise despite the bureaucratic complications involved. The prevented attack would have resulted in the loss of over $45 million in equipment and potentially caused injuries to personnel involved in the training exercise. Shaw's work had not only solved the immediate crisis, but also established security protocols that would protect future operations from similar threats. Colonel Ramsey's recognition of Shaw's contributions was immediate and comprehensive, acknowledging both her technical expertise and her commitment to national security. Despite the personal and professional challenges she had faced in providing assistance through unofficial channels. The immediate impact of Shaw's successful resolution of the drone system crisis was the restoration of confidence in military training operations and the prevention of additional equipment losses that could have totaled hundreds of millions of dollars. Her security modifications were immediately implemented across all similar systems, providing comprehensive protection against the vulnerabilities that had been exploited by hostile actors. Colonel Ramsey's recommendation led to Shaw being offered a formal consulting contract that would provide her with official status and appropriate clearances for ongoing work on classified military systems. The arrangement would enable her to contribute her expertise through proper channels while maintaining the operational security necessary for sensitive projects. The success of her intervention also prompted broader review of how former Special Operations personnel were being utilized, leading to policy changes that would make it easier for individuals with valuable expertise to contribute to current operations, despite bureaucratic obstacles or unofficial status. The long-term impact of Shaw's work extended beyond the immediate drone system improvements to influence how the military approached cybersecurity and the protection of classified technology systems. Her identification of systematic vulnerabilities led to comprehensive security audits of other critical systems and the development of new protocols for preventing similar exploitations. Shaw's case became a model for utilizing the expertise of former Special Operations personnel who possessed unique knowledge and capabilities that remained valuable to current operations. The recognition that bureaucratic obstacles could prevent access to crucial expertise led to policy reforms that streamlined the process for engaging qualified former personnel in consulting roles. Her work also contributed to improved understanding of the threats facing military technology systems and the sophisticated methods being used by hostile actors to exploit vulnerabilities in American defense capabilities. 1 year after the checkpoint incident that had nearly prevented her from contributing to national security, Shaw stood in a secure briefing room at Fort Carson, presenting her latest analysis of emerging cybersecurity threats to a room full of senior military officials. Her official consultant status and restored clearances had enabled her to make ongoing contributions that protected American military operations and personnel. "The threats we face are constantly evolving," she told the assembled officers, "but our ability to counter them depends on recognizing expertise wherever it exists and being willing to utilize it effectively, regardless of bureaucratic obstacles or conventional expectations." Colonel Ramsey, now promoted to Brigadier General, smiled as he listened to Shaw's briefing. The woman who had once been turned away at a checkpoint had become one of the military's most valuable cybersecurity consultants, proving that expertise and dedication were more important than official status or conventional career paths in protecting national security.